The ring was the last thing she had left of her mother. Sarah stared at the delicate gold band in her palm, watching the tiny sapphire catch the weak morning light filtering through the pawnshop window. Her mother had worn it every day until the sickness took her. Her father had pressed it into Sarah's hand at the funeral, his eyes hollow with grief. "Keep it safe," he'd whispered. "It's all we have left of her." That had been 3 years ago, before the debts, before the creditors, before her father's gambling had devoured everything they owned and left them with nothing but a crumbling cottage and a mountain of IOUs to dangerous men. Now her father was dead too. A hunting accident, they said, though Sarah knew better. Men who owed money to Cyrus Blackwood didn't have accidents. They had warnings. And when those warnings went unheeded, they had funerals, which left Sarah alone, with nothing but her mother's ring and a debt she could never hope to repay. "You sure about this, girl?" The pawnbroker squinted at her from behind his grimy counter, his beady eyes fixed on the ring. "Once you sell it, it's gone. No coming back." Sarah's throat tightened. She wanted to say no. She wanted to snatch the ring back and run, to keep this one small piece of her mother close to her heart forever. But Cyrus Blackwood's men were coming tomorrow. And if she didn't have at least a portion of what she owed, they wouldn't just threaten her this time. "How much?" she asked, hating how small her voice sounded. The pawnbroker made a show of examining the ring, turning it this way and that. 5 coppers. 5. Sarah's stomach dropped. "It's gold. Real gold with a sapphire. It's worth at least 5 coppers. His smile was ugly. "Take it or leave it, girl. No one else in this town's going to give you more. Not for something so small." 5 coppers. It wasn't even enough to buy food for a week, let alone satisfy Blackwood's men. But it was something. Maybe if she combined it with what little she had hidden under the floorboards, maybe if she begged them for more time. The shop door burst open. Sarah spun, her heart slamming against her ribs. Had they found her already? Had Blackwood sent his men early to... She froze. The man who filled the doorway was not one of Blackwood's thugs. He was something else entirely. Tall didn't begin to describe him. He had to duck to enter the shop, his broad shoulders barely clearing the frame. His dark hair was swept back from a face that looked carved from granite, all sharp angles and hard lines. But it was his eyes that made Sarah's breath catch. Gold. Pure, molten gold, burning with an intensity that made her feel pinned in place. Behind him, 2 guards in royal crimson took positions at the door. The pawnbroker scrambled to his feet so fast he knocked over his stool. Your Majesty, we weren't expecting... What an honor to have you in my humble establishment." "Your Majesty." The words echoed in Sarah's mind, refusing to make sense. The king. The Lycan king was standing in a run-down pawnshop in the poorest district of his own capital city. That was impossible. Kings didn't come to places like this. Kings didn't... Those golden eyes locked onto her. Sarah forgot how to breathe. He crossed the small shop in 3 strides, stopping directly in front of her. This close, she could see the silver threaded through his dark hair, could smell pine and wood smoke, and something wild that made something deep inside her stir. His gaze dropped to her hand, to the ring clutched in her trembling fingers. "Who forced you to do this?" His voice was deep, rough, and utterly unexpected. Not demanding or cruel, but gentle, almost tender. Sarah blinked. What?" "The ring." He nodded toward her hand. "It's an heirloom. I can see it in the way you're holding it. like it's the most precious thing you own, like letting it go would tear something out of you. His golden eyes lifted to meet hers. So I'll ask again. Who forced you to sell it? Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. No one had ever looked at her like that before. Like they could see past the threadbare dress and the hunger-hollow cheeks and the desperation. Like they could see her. No one forced me, she managed. I need the money. For what? It was none of his business. He was the king, yes, but her debts were her own burden to bear. She should bow her head and murmur something polite and escape this shop before. My father owed money to a man named Cyrus Blackwood. The words spilled out before she could stop them. When he died, the debt passed to me. If I don't pay, they'll. She swallowed hard. They'll hurt me. Or worse. Something shifted in the king's expression. A darkness crept into those golden eyes, transforming his face from merely intimidating to genuinely terrifying. Cyrus Blackwood, he repeated softly. You know him? I know of him. His jaw tightened. A loan shark who operates in my city's shadows, preying on the desperate and the vulnerable. He's been on my council's list for some time. The pawnbroker made a small, strangled sound from behind his counter. Sarah had almost forgotten he was there. The king turned to him, and the shopkeeper flinched as though struck. You were going to give her 5 coppers, the king said. It wasn't a question. For a gold ring with a genuine sapphire, a family heirloom, clearly worth 20 times that amount. The market value, supply and demand. Get out. 2 words, spoken quietly, but they carried the weight of absolute authority. The pawnbroker didn't argue. He scrambled out from behind his counter and fled through the back door, leaving Sarah alone with the king and his guards. She should have been terrified. She was alone with the most powerful man in the realm, a man rumoured to have killed hundreds in battle, a man whose very name made grown warriors tremble. Instead, she felt safe, which made no sense at all. You won't be selling your ring, the king said, turning back to her. And you won't be paying Cyrus Blackwood a single copper. But I owe. You owe nothing. His voice softened. Whatever debt your father incurred died with him. Blackwood has no legal claim to you, and even if he did, I wouldn't allow him to collect. Sarah shook her head. You don't understand. Men like Blackwood don't care about legal claims. If I don't pay, he'll send his men. They'll let them come. The words were spoken calmly, almost casually, but they carried an undercurrent of violence that made Sarah's skin prickle. I've been looking for an excuse to deal with Blackwood for years, the king continued. If he's foolish enough to threaten someone under my protection, he'll give me exactly what I need. Under your protection? Sarah stared at him. I'm nobody. I'm just. Why would you? She stopped. Because the king was looking at her again with that intensity, that focus that made her feel like the only person in the world. His nostrils flared slightly, and something flickered across his hard features. Surprise, recognition, wonder. What's your name? He asked quietly. Sarah. Sarah Whitmore. Sarah. He said it like he was tasting the word, savouring it. I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. Will you do that? She nodded, mute with confusion. Do you have anywhere safe to go? Family? Friends? Anyone who can take you in? The question hit harder than she expected. She thought of the empty cottage, the cold hearth, the silence where her parents' voices used to be. No, she whispered. There's no one. Something settled in the king's expression. Decision, certainty. Then you'll come with me. Sarah's heart stuttered. What? To the palace. You'll have rooms, food, safety. Blackwood won't be able to touch you there. He paused, and for a moment, the fearsome Lycan king looked almost uncertain. I know you have no reason to trust me. I know this must seem strange, a king offering shelter to a stranger in a pawn shop. But I promise you, Sarah, I swear on my crown and my honor, I mean you no harm. She should refuse. She should run. Kings didn't rescue poor girls from pawn shops. There had to be a catch, a price, something he wanted in return. But when she looked into his golden eyes, she saw nothing but sincerity, nothing but a genuine desire to help her. And underneath that, buried so deep she almost missed it, she saw longing. Why? She asked. Why would you help me? The king was quiet for a long moment. Then slowly, he reached out and closed her fingers around her mother's ring, pressing it gently back into her palm. Because you deserve to keep the things that matter to you, he said softly. And because I think, perhaps, I've been waiting a very long time to meet you. Sarah didn't understand. None of this made sense. But when the king offered her his hand, she took it. The palace was overwhelming. Sarah had seen it from a distance, of course. Everyone in the capital had. The massive stone fortress that dominated the skyline, all towers and spires and ancient power. But seeing it up close, walking through its iron gates and across its sprawling courtyard, was something else entirely. She felt like an imposter, a fraud, a poor girl in a threadbare dress, surrounded by marble and gold, and servants in crisp uniforms who bowed as the king passed. They didn't bow to her. They stared, their eyes full of questions she couldn't answer. Who is she? Why is she here? What could the king possibly want with someone like her? She was wondering the same thing. The king, she still didn't know his name, she realized, led her through corridor after corridor, past tapestries and paintings and suits of armor that had probably been standing since before her great-grandparents were born. Finally, he stopped before a set of ornate double doors. These will be your chambers, he said, pushing them open. Sarah's breath caught. The room beyond was larger than her entire cottage. A massive four-poster bed dominated one wall, draped in fabrics of deep blue and silver. A fire crackled in a hearth big enough to stand in. Bookshelves lined the walls, and through an archway she glimpsed a bathing chamber with an actual copper tub. This is too much, she whispered. I can't. This is meant for nobility, not. It's meant for you. The king's voice was firm but gentle. You'll find clothes in the wardrobe, whatever you need. The servants will bring meals, or you can take them in the dining hall if you prefer company. He paused. Though I'd prefer if you'd take dinner with me tonight, if you're willing. Sarah turned to face him. In the warm light of the fire, he looked less intimidating somehow. Still massive, still powerful, but there was a softness around his eyes that she hadn't noticed before. I don't even know your name, she said. Something flickered across his expression. Surprise, perhaps, that she'd asked, or maybe that she hadn't known. Damon, he said. My name is Damon. Damon? She tested the word. It felt strange on her tongue, too intimate for a king, too ordinary for someone so extraordinary. Why am I really here? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he moved to the fireplace, staring into the flames with his back to her. What do you know about mate bonds? The question caught her off guard. I… Mate bonds? The fated mate stories. She shook her head. Fairy tales. Something mothers tell their daughters to make them believe in love. They're not fairy tales. His voice was quiet. They're rare, yes. Most Lycans never find their fated mate. They settle for chosen bonds, political marriages, convenient arrangements. But true mates exist. And when a Lycan finds theirs… He turned to face her, and the intensity in his golden eyes made her heart stutter. When I walked into that pawn shop, he said slowly, I caught your scent, and everything in me, my wolf, my soul, every instinct I possess, recognized you. Sierra stared at him. The words made no sense. She was nobody. A poor girl drowning in debt, with nothing to offer a king. The idea that she could be his fated mate was absurd, impossible. You're wrong, she said. I can't be… I'm not wrong. He crossed the room, stopping just close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. I've lived for 273 years, Sarah. I've searched every corner of this realm for my mate. I'd given up hope that I would ever find her. His voice dropped lower, rougher. And then you walked into my life, clutching your mother's ring like it was the only thing keeping you together. And I knew. She shook her head, backing away until her legs hit the edge of the bed. This is insane. You don't know anything about me. I'm nobody special. I'm just a girl who couldn't even pay her father's debts. You're not nobody. He didn't follow her, didn't crowd her. He simply stood there, patient, waiting. And your worth has nothing to do with debts or money or anything your circumstances have forced upon you. Sarah's eyes burned. She blinked rapidly, refusing to let the tears fall. She'd learned long ago that crying solved nothing. Crying didn't pay debts. Crying didn't bring back dead parents. Crying just made her feel weak. I don't believe in fate, she whispered. I don't believe in fairy tales. My life has been nothing but loss and struggle and trying to survive one more day. Things like this. She gestured vaguely at the opulent room, at him, at all of it. Don't happen to people like me. Damon was quiet for a long moment. Then he moved to a chair near the fire and sat, suddenly looking less like a king and more like a man. Tell me about them, he said. Your parents. The request startled her. What? Your mother, your father. Tell me about them. He leaned back, his golden eyes soft. I want to know you, Sarah, not the debt or the circumstances. You. No one had asked her about her parents since they'd died. No one had cared. The creditors only wanted money. The neighbours only wanted gossip. And Blackwood's men only wanted to remind her what happened to people who didn't pay. She shouldn't tell him anything. She should keep her walls up, protect herself, remember that this was temporary and strange, and couldn't possibly last. Instead, she found herself sinking onto the edge of the bed. My mother was a seamstress, she heard herself say, the best in the district. People came from all over the city for her work. She used to sing while she sewed. These old songs her grandmother taught her. I'd sit at her feet and listen for hours. And your father? A merchant, or he tried to be. Sarah's throat tightened. He was kind, but not very good with money. After my mother died, he didn't handle it well. The gambling started as a way to forget, I think. Then it became an escape. Then an addiction. She stared at her hands. I tried to help him. I sold everything we had, took on work wherever I could find it. But it was never enough. That's not your fault. It feels like my fault. The admission slipped out before she could stop it. If I'd been smarter, or worked harder, or figured out how to make him stop. Sarah. Damon's voice cut through her spiral. Look at me. She lifted her eyes to meet his. Your father made his own choices, he said quietly. You did everything you could to save him. The fact that it wasn't enough doesn't mean you failed. It means you were fighting a battle that was never yours to win. The tears she'd been holding back spilled over. She swiped at them angrily, embarrassed to be crying in front of a king, in front of this stranger, who somehow felt less like a stranger with every passing moment. Damon rose from his chair. He crossed to her slowly, giving her time to pull away, and crouched before her so they were eye to eye. Your mother's ring, he said softly. Why is it so important to you? Sarah clutched her hand to her chest, feeling the small band pressed against her palm. It's all I have left of her. When I wear it, I can almost pretend she's still here, still with me. Her voice broke. I almost sold it today, the last piece of her, and I almost let it go for 5 coppers. But you didn't. Only because you stopped me. No. Damon shook his head. I saw your face when that pawnbroker named his price. You were devastated, but you were also relieved. Part of you didn't want to go through with it. Part of you was looking for any excuse to walk away. She wanted to argue. She wanted to tell him he was wrong, that she would have sold the ring if he hadn't intervened. But she wasn't sure that was true. Damon reached out and took her hand, gently, carefully, like she was something precious. He uncurled her fingers, revealing the ring nestled in her palm. Keep it, he said. Keep everything that matters to you. You don't have to sacrifice the pieces of yourself anymore, Sarah. Not for debt, not for survival, not for anything. His thumb brushed across her knuckles. I meant what I said. You're under my protection now, and I will never let anyone take anything from you again. She didn't know what to say, didn't know how to respond to kindness this overwhelming, this unearned. So she said the only thing she could think of. Why does it feel like I know you? Something warm and raw flickered in Damon's golden eyes. Because you do, he said quietly. Somewhere deep down, in a place beyond logic or reason, you know me, just like I know you. He released her hand and rose to his feet. Get some rest. I'll send someone to escort you to dinner this evening, if you still want to come. He was giving her an out, a chance to retreat, to hide, to pretend this day had never happened. She should take it. I'll come, she said instead. Damon smiled. It was small, just a slight curve of his lips, but it transformed his hard features into something almost beautiful. I'm glad, he said. And as he left her alone in her impossible new chambers, Sarah realized something that terrified her. She was glad too. Dinner was not what she expected. Sarah had braced herself for a grand hall filled with nobles, for judgmental stares and whispered gossip about the pauper the king had dragged in from the streets. Instead, Damon led her to a small private dining room with a table set for 2. Candlelight flickered off the stone walls. A fire crackled in the hearth. And the food, roasted pheasant, fresh vegetables, warm bread with honey butter, smelled so good it made her eyes water. I thought you might prefer something quiet, Damon said, pulling out her chair. The great hall can be overwhelming. She sat, smoothing down the blue silk dress the servants had helped her into. It was the finest thing she'd ever worn, and she was terrified of spilling something on it. Thank you, she managed. For this, for all of it. You don't have to thank me, Sarah. I do, though. She looked up at him as he settled into the chair across from her. I keep waiting for the catch, the price, the thing you want in return. There is no catch. There's always a catch. Damon studied her for a long moment, his golden eyes unreadable. Then he leaned back in his chair and spoke. When I was young, before I became king, I watched my mother waste away in a loveless marriage. My father was cruel, cold. He treated her like a possession rather than a partner, and she spent 30 years slowly dying under the weight of his indifference. His jaw tightened. I swore I would never do that to anyone. I swore that if I ever found my mate, I would spend every day making sure she knew her worth. Sarah's chest ached. I'm sorry. About your mother. She died when I was 40, still young for a Lycan. He paused. I think she simply gave up, stopped fighting. There was nothing left in her life worth holding on to. The words hit too close to home. Sarah thought of her own father, the way the light had slowly drained from his eyes after her mother's death, the way he'd stopped caring about anything except the next card game, the next bottle, the next escape from a reality he couldn't bear to face. My father was the same, she said quietly. After my mother died, it was like part of him died too, the part that wanted to live. She stared at her plate. I used to be so angry at him, for leaving me alone, for choosing the gambling and the drinking over being my father. But now I think he was just broken. And I don't know how to be angry at someone for being broken. Damon was quiet for a moment. Then he reached across the table and covered her hand with his. You're allowed to be angry, he said. You're allowed to grieve and rage and feel everything you need to feel. His pain doesn't erase yours. Sarah blinked back the sting in her eyes. I haven't let myself feel any of it. Not really. There wasn't time. I was too busy surviving to fall apart. You don't have to survive anymore. His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. You can fall apart now, if you need to. I'll be here to help you put the pieces back together. She didn't know what to say to that. No one had ever offered to hold her while she broke. No one had ever suggested that breaking might be something she was allowed to do. They ate in comfortable silence after that. Sarah discovered she was ravenous, actually hungry, in a way she hadn't been in months. The food was delicious, and for once, there was no guilt attached to eating it. No mental calculation of how much she was consuming, how much was left, how long she could stretch the scraps. After dinner, Damon led her to a small balcony overlooking the palace gardens. The moon hung full and heavy in the night sky, casting silver light over the manicured hedges and flowering trees below. It's beautiful, Sarah breathed. It is. But when she glanced at him, he wasn't looking at the gardens. He was looking at her. Heat crept up her cheeks. You're staring. I am. He didn't seem embarrassed by the admission. I've been staring since the moment I walked into that pawn shop. I can't seem to stop. Why? The question came out smaller than she intended. I'm nothing special. I'm just... Stop. The word was gentle but firm. Stop telling yourself that lie. It's not a lie. It's the truth. I'm poor. I'm nobody. I have nothing to offer. You have everything to offer. Damon turned to face her fully, his massive frame blocking out the moonlight. You have strength, resilience, a heart that keeps beating even when the world has given you every reason to let it stop. His golden eyes burned into hers. Do you know what I see when I look at you, Sarah? She shook her head, not trusting her voice. I see a woman who carried her family's burdens without complaint, who worked herself to the bone trying to save a man who couldn't be saved, who was about to sacrifice the last piece of her mother to protect herself from monsters, and who still, even in that moment of desperation, hesitated. Because some part of you refused to let go of love, even when letting go would have been easier. He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body, could smell that intoxicating scent of pine and wood smoke. That's not nothing, Sarah. That's everything. That's treasure where the world sees trash. That's exactly the kind of person I've been searching for my entire life. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. You barely know me. I know enough. He raised his hand, slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he cupped her cheek, his palm warm against her skin. I know that your favorite color is blue because it was your mother's. I know that you hum when you're nervous. You did it all through dinner. I know that you're terrified to trust me, terrified to believe this is real, and I know exactly why. Tears pricked at her eyes. How do you know all of that? Because I've been paying attention. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone. Because you matter to me. Because every small detail about you is something I want to memorize and keep. She should step back. She should put distance between them, remind herself that this was impossible, that fairy tales didn't come true, and men like him didn't fall for women like her. Instead, she leaned into his touch. I'm scared, she admitted, the confession barely audible. I know. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to trust someone, how to let someone in. Everyone I've ever loved has left me. I'm not going anywhere. His forehead dropped to rest against hers. I've waited 273 years for you, Sarah. I'm not leaving now that I've found you. They stood there, breathing the same air, his hand cradling her face like she was something precious and breakable. Syrah's wolf, quiet for so long she'd almost forgotten it existed, stirred in her chest, reaching, yearning, recognizing something in him that her human mind was still struggling to accept. Mate, the wolf whispered. Ours. Damon's eyes flared brighter, gold bleeding into amber. Your wolf, he said roughly. I can feel her. She's never... I didn't know she could... Sarah trailed off, overwhelmed. She knows. His voice was strained, like he was holding himself back by a thread. She knows what you are to me, what I am to you. He was going to kiss her. She could see it in his eyes, feel it in the tension vibrating through his body, and she wanted him to. Wanted it with a desperation that frightened her. But he pulled back. Sarah blinked, confused and oddly bereft. Why did you stop? Because when I kiss you for the first time, his voice was rough, barely controlled. I want you to be certain, not scared, not confused, not wondering if this is real. He pressed a kiss to her forehead instead, soft and achingly tender. I can wait. I told you I would, and I meant it. He stepped away, and Sarah felt the loss of his warmth like a physical ache. Good night, Sarah, he said. Sleep well. He was gone before she could respond, disappearing into the palace and leaving her alone on the moonlit balcony with her racing heart and her awakening wolf and the terrifying, wonderful realization that was settling into her bones. She was falling for him. The Lycan king. The man who had found her in a pawn shop and seen treasure where everyone else saw trash. The man who waited, who listened, who touched her like she was precious. She was falling, and she had no idea how to stop. She wasn't sure she wanted to. Cyrus Blackwood came for her 5 days later. Sarah was in the palace library when she heard the commotion, raised voices, the clash of steel, and then a sound that turned her blood to ice. Her name screamed through the corridors like a curse. Sarah Whitmore, I know you're here, you thieving little bitch. Come out and face what you owe. She was on her feet before she could think, her body responding to years of fear. That voice, that cold, cruel voice that had haunted her nightmares since the day her father died. She'd heard it threaten her, demean her, describe in graphic detail what would happen if she didn't pay. The library doors burst open. Blackwood stood in the entrance, flanked by 6 of his men. He was exactly as she remembered, tall, lean, with a face like a blade and eyes that held no warmth. Blood dripped from a cut on his cheek, and his fine clothes were dishevelled, but his smile was triumphant. There you are. He stepped into the library, glass crunching under his boots. Playing princess while your debts rot. Did you think hiding behind the king's skirts would protect you? Sarah's legs trembled, but she forced herself to stand straight. How did you get in here? Money opens doors, even palace doors. His smile widened. The king's guards are loyal, but loyalty has a price. Everything has a price. He moved closer, and his men fanned out behind him. Including you. She's not for sale. The voice came from behind Blackwood, cold and deadly. Damon strode through the shattered doorway, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. His eyes blazed gold, brighter than Sarah had ever seen them, and his face was a mask of barely contained fury. Behind him, a dozen royal guards took position, swords drawn. Blackwood turned, and for the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossed his features. Your Majesty, this is a private matter between myself and... There is nothing private about breaking into my palace and threatening someone under my protection. Damon's voice was terrifyingly quiet. You have exactly 30 seconds to explain yourself before I tear out your throat. The girl owes me money. Blackwood's confidence was returning, his smile sharpening. Her father borrowed heavily, died before he could repay, and the debt passed to her. It's legal. Binding. I have documents. I don't care about your documents. You should. Blackwood pulled a folded paper from his coat. Because according to the law of this realm, debts of blood are hereditary. She owes me 300 gold pieces, plus interest. If she can't pay, and we both know she can't, then she becomes my property until the debt is worked off. His eyes slid to Sarah, and the hunger in them made her skin crawl. I have very specific plans for how she'll work it off. Sarah's stomach turned. She'd known, in theory, what Blackwood wanted, but hearing it stated so baldly, so casually, made it horrifyingly real. Damon moved. One moment he was standing by the door. The next, he had Blackwood by the throat, lifting him off the ground like he weighed nothing. The loan shark's men lunged forward, but the royal guards intercepted them, steel ringing against steel. Let me be very clear, Damon said, his voice a growl that barely sounded human. Sarah Whitmore belongs to no one. Not to you, not to your documents, not to any debt her father may have incurred. She is mine, my mate, my future queen. And if you ever speak her name again, I will end your bloodline. Blackwood's face was turning purple, his hands clawing uselessly at Damon's grip. You can't... The law... I am the law. Damon's eyes blazed. And I say her debts are void. Every contract you hold with the Whitmore family is hereby dissolved. Every copper you claim she owes is forfeit. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried through the entire room. And every threat you've made against her will be repaid tenfold. He released Blackwood, letting him crumple to the floor in a gasping heap. "Take him," Damon commanded. "Take all of them. They'll answer for their crimes against the crown." The guards moved efficiently, binding Blackwood and his men and dragging them toward the door. But before they could remove him completely, Blackwood lifted his head and spat one final taunt. "She'll never be yours, Majesty. She's trash, gutter trash from a family of failures. You can dress her up and call her queen, but she'll always be—" Sarah moved before she knew what she was doing. She crossed the library in 5 quick strides, and her palm connected with Blackwood's face in a crack that echoed off the stone walls. The force of the slap snapped his head to the side, and when he looked back at her, there was blood on his lip. "My father was a good man who made bad choices," she said, her voice steady despite the fear still churning in her gut. "My mother was the kindest woman I've ever known, and I am not trash." She stepped closer, and something in her expression made Blackwood flinch. "I spent years believing I was worthless because men like you told me I was. I let you make me small, make me afraid, make me feel like I deserved every terrible thing that happened to me." Her hands were shaking, but her voice grew stronger. "But I was wrong, and so were you." She turned away from him, turned toward Damon, who was watching her with something like wonder on his face. "Get him out of my sight," she said. The guards obeyed, dragging Blackwood through the door and out of her life. And then she was in Damon's arms. She didn't remember moving, didn't remember deciding to close the distance between them. One moment she was standing alone, trembling with the aftermath of everything she'd just done. And the next, she was pressed against his chest, his arms wrapped around her like he'd never let go. "You were magnificent," he murmured against her hair. "Absolutely magnificent." "I was terrified." "I know. You did it anyway." He pulled back just enough to look at her, his golden eyes soft. "That's what courage is." Sarah stared up at him, this impossible man who had saved her from a pawnshop and given her a palace, who had waited patiently for her to believe she was worth loving, who had just declared her his queen in front of witnesses. "You called me your mate," she said quietly. "Your future queen." "I did. You meant it. Every word." His hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone. "But only if you want it, Sarah. Only if you choose it. I won't force you into anything." She thought about her life before him, the hunger, the fear, the constant struggle to survive. She thought about her mother's ring, still safe on her finger, because he'd stopped her from selling it. She thought about all the nights she'd spent alone, convinced she would never be anything more than a burden to be discarded. And she thought about him, his patience, his kindness, the way he looked at her like she was the answer to every prayer he'd ever whispered. "I choose you," she said. The words came out certain, clear, final. Something broke in Damon's expression, relief and joy and desperate, aching love all crashing together. "Say it again," he breathed. "I choose you." She rose on her toes, bringing her face closer to his. "I choose this. I choose us." He kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't patient. It was 273 years of waiting crashing into her all at once, his mouth claiming hers with a hunger that stole her breath and set her blood on fire. She kissed him back with everything she had, her fingers fisting in his shirt, her body arching into his. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. "Mine," he growled against her lips, the word more wolf than man. "Yours?" she agreed. "And you're mine." His smile was fierce and tender and full of promise. Always. The bonding ceremony took place 2 weeks later, on the first night of the harvest moon. Sarah stood before the mirror in the Queen's chambers, her chambers now, and barely recognized the woman staring back at her. The gown was ivory silk, embroidered with silver thread that caught the candlelight like captured starlight. Her dark hair had been woven with tiny white flowers, and her mother's sapphire ring gleamed on her finger, exactly where it belonged. She looked like a queen. She was starting to feel like one too. A knock at the door made her turn. "Come in." Marta, the head of the household staff who had taken Sarah under her wing from the first day, entered with tears already glistening in her eyes. "Oh, my lady, you're a vision." "I don't feel like a vision. I feel like I'm going to be sick." Marta laughed and crossed to her, taking both her hands. "Every bride feels that way, even ones marrying kings." She squeezed gently. "He's been pacing the throne room for an hour. I've never seen His Majesty so nervous. You'd think he was facing a battle, not a bonding." Something warm unfurled in Sarah's chest. "He's nervous?" "Terrified, I'd say. Terrified you'll change your mind. Terrified he'll wake up and discover this was all a dream." Marta's eyes softened. "That man has waited his whole life for you, my lady, and now that he has you, he can barely believe his luck." Sarah blinked back the sting of tears. She couldn't cry. Not yet. The ceremony hadn't even started. "I'm ready," she said. The throne room had been transformed. Thousands of candles lined the walls, their golden light reflecting off polished marble and gleaming silver. White flowers cascaded from every surface, filling the air with sweetness. And filling the hall were hundreds of witnesses, nobles, dignitaries, pack leaders from every territory in the realm, all gathered to watch the Lycan king take his mate. But Sarah barely saw any of it. She only saw Damon. He stood at the end of the aisle, dressed in black and silver, looking every inch the legendary king. But his eyes, those golden eyes that had seen centuries of war and loss and waiting, were fixed on her with an expression that made her heart stop. Love. Pure, overwhelming, unguarded love. He looked at her like she was the sun rising after an endless night. She walked toward him on steady legs, her fear dissolving with every step. This was right. This was where she was meant to be. Every terrible thing that had happened to her, the loss, the debt, the years of struggle, had led her here. To him. When she reached him, he took her hands, and the trembling in his fingers told her everything she needed to know. The fearsome Lycan king, the warrior who had conquered armies and ruled for centuries, was shaking because of her. "You came," he breathed, so quietly only she could hear. "Did you think I wouldn't?" "I thought—" He stopped, swallowed. "Part of me still can't believe you're real, that any of this is real." Sarah squeezed his hands. "I'm real. I'm here. And I'm not going anywhere." The ceremony was ancient and beautiful. Vows spoken in the old tongue, promises exchanged under the light of the full moon streaming through the windows above. When the officiant asked if she would accept Damon as her mate, her partner, her equal, Sarah's voice rang clear through the hall. "I will." And when Damon spoke his vows, his voice was rough with emotion. "I have lived for 273 years, he said, "and I have never known what it meant to be complete. I built kingdoms, Won wars, accumulated power that most men only dream of. But I was empty, a shell going through the motions of living without ever truly being alive. His grip on her hands tightened. And then I walked into a pawn shop and found you, a woman with nothing but her mother's ring, and more courage than anyone I've ever known. A woman who had every reason to give up, but never did. A woman who taught me, in a matter of weeks, what 2 centuries of searching never could. His golden eyes burned into hers. You taught me that the things that matter most can't be bought or conquered. They can only be given freely. And you gave yourself to me, Sarah. Not because I'm a king, but despite it. That is the greatest gift I have ever received. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She didn't try to stop them. I love you, he said, the words carrying through the silent hall. I will love you until the stars burn out and the mountains crumble to dust. And I will spend every day of my very long life proving to you that you made the right choice. The officiant pronounced them bonded, and Damon kissed her, soft and sweet and full of promise. The hall erupted in cheers, but Sarah barely heard them. All she knew was his lips on hers, his arms around her, his heart beating against her own. She was his queen now. She was home. 6 months later, Sarah stood on the balcony of the royal chambers, watching the sun set over the city below. The same city where, not so long ago, she had walked into a pawn shop ready to sell the last piece of her mother for 5 coppers. So much had changed since then. Cyrus Blackwood was rotting in the dungeon, awaiting trial for his crimes against the crown. His network had been dismantled, his ill-gotten gains seized and distributed to the families he had preyed upon for years. The pawnbroker who had tried to cheat her had been fined and publicly shamed, and the guards who had taken Blackwood's bribes had been stripped of their positions. Justice, Sarah had learned, moved slowly in the realm, but it moved. Arms wrapped around her from behind, and she leaned back into Damon's chest with a contented sigh. You're thinking loud thoughts again, he murmured against her hair. I can practically hear them. She smiled. Good thoughts. I was thinking about how different everything is. 6 months ago, I was nobody. Now I'm a queen, he finished. Beloved by your people. Cherished by your mate. Thriving. She turned in his arms, resting her hands on his chest. Do you know what I thought about today? Tell me. The pawn shop. The day you walked in and changed everything. She touched her mother's ring, still safe on her finger. I was so convinced that selling this ring was the end, the final proof that I had nothing left, that I was nothing. But it wasn't the end. It was the beginning, Damon said softly. It was the beginning. She rose on her toes and pressed a kiss to his jaw. Thank you for seeing something in me when I couldn't see it in myself. Thank you for being brave enough to let me. His arms tightened around her. I know it wasn't easy. I know trusting someone after everything you'd been through took more courage than I can imagine. It wasn't courage. It was you. She pulled back to meet his eyes. You made it safe to believe again. You made it safe to hope. Damon's expression softened, that unguarded love filling his golden eyes once more. I love you, Sarah. More than I have words to express. More than 2 centuries of living prepared me to feel. I love you too. She smiled, feeling the truth of it settle into her bones. I didn't know I was capable of feeling this much. I didn't know anything could feel this good. He kissed her then, slow and deep and full of promise. When they parted, the first stars were appearing in the darkening sky. No regrets? he asked, echoing a question he'd asked her 100 times before. Sarah thought about the girl who had clutched her mother's ring in a grimy pawnshop, ready to let go of the last piece of herself to survive. She thought about the woman who had stood up to her tormentor and declared her own worth. She thought about everything she had lost and everything she had gained. "Not a single one," she said. And as Damon pulled her closer, as the stars blazed to life above them and the city sparkled below, Sarah finally understood what it meant to be treasured. She had been poor once, desperate, convinced she was worthless. Now she was loved. She was home. She was exactly where she was meant to be. And she would never let anyone make her forget it again. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. Until next time.